All right, guys, can't stop, won't stop. Let's keep going. So what I want to do now, right? We've done the instance variables. We've done the default constructor. We've done the overloaded constructor. We've done the getters. We've done the setters, the toString, and the equals. Okay. The next thing and the last thing to do really is to start creating some custom methods, right? What makes a humanoid different from a pencil or a pen is that it can obviously has different properties, right? Person has a name and a homeworld. Pencil, pen don't really have that, right? But also the methods that they can take, right? A human can run versus a pen or pencil might write. If you think about like the type of action we can take on. Now I want to pause before I continue on with that to say, I don't know how long we've done in these videos for this lesson so far. It's probably been an hour or two, I don't know, maybe even 3. I have gone super in depth. I want to make sure that you understand all of this stuff in detail. You'll see by the end of this lesson, we'll create a new class from scratch, and it will probably take like, 5 minutes at most. If even that, we'll go through and do it as fast as we can. So I just do want to show you this probably looks a lot harder than it is, but I'm just really making sure that I don't skip any steps, not only in the mechanics of it, but also in the understanding, because this is really critical for your future as a programmer to understand these things and to understand them well. It'll really set you up for success. So with that said, we're going to add a new method, and that method is not this first one. We're actually going to do the second one, which is to add some kind of galactic ID. Okay, now before we do that, let's actually go back into our main, and I want to actually start kind of filling out our storyline here. We were kind of just almost like I would call this something like a sandbox code. So if I want to kind of comment this a little bit better, sandbox code. We were just kind of playing around right here, right? So I'm actually going to take all this code, and I'm going to comment it out. And I'm literally going to take this whole thing, this sandbox code, and I'm just going to put it way down at the bottom here. Okay. All right, so now we're really going to start. Okay, so let's create a number of humanoids. Okay, and I'm just going to use some examples. Some of my former students have come up with. I added one new one, but we're going to enter into this Star Wars universe a little bit more now. So we're going to make Luca here. So new humanoid, and I'm going to call this humanoid Luca Skyscraper, long lost cousin to Luke. Okay, she is from Tatooine, has an attack of the trusty rock, paper, scissors attack, and inherited the force projection defense from our good friend Luke in episode 8 or whatever it was. He used that, 7 or 8. Okay, so remember, humanoid, it takes in 4 properties: the name, the homeworld, the attack, and the defense. Okay, so let's go ahead and just add a few more characters here. So we'll add in the new Baby Yoda, ever popular, from it's a show called Mandalorian. So new human. Hope you haven't seen that show, because it probably is a big plot spoiler right there. That ruins nothing. It's only the first episode. Okay, so Baby Yoda, we'll say is from Dagobah. We'll assume that maybe he's somehow related to normal Yoda. Who knows? I don't know where Yoda was really from, but I think that's where he showed up in one of the movies. His attack is the Force Choke, and his defense, of course, is cuteness. Okay, and then we will have humanoid Mace. There's a new humanoid. That will be Mace Windu from planet She. His attack is the purple saber slash, and his defense is run. I don't really like to fight, he just runs. And humanoid Kenobi for, this is new humanoid Kenobi Bryant from La La Land. And his Kenobi's attack is Slam Dunk Yo Head. And his defense is the Smack Down Block. Perfect. All right, so we've got a few people in our humanoids. We have not dealt with this robot yet, the droid. So we'll leave that for a little bit later. But now I want to basically add each person to an array list. Okay, so we have all these data types, and we can add them to an array list just like we did an array list of strings for the cards for Module 2. So I can simply say array list, and in the angle brackets where I do the data type, I can now just say humanoid. Okay, and then I can say humanoid, and I'll give this some kind of name. Now I am going to have these people run through the Empire's DMV, so Empire DMV. Okay, if you're not familiar with that term, DMV, that's the Department of Motor Vehicles, where you get your license and registration for your car. New array list humanoid. Okay, so just like we did with the array list of strings and integers in earlier modules, it's just humanoid is my data type that I'm storing. So you want to go ahead and do a java.util on that to import the java.util. Okay, and then I can simply add all these. So empire dmv.add, and I'll add that first one, Luca. Okay, to make things a little bit quicker, I'm going to just copy this line. I'm going to paste it 3 more times. Then I'm just going to copy and paste each of these humanoids. So just double click is the easiest way. Control C, Control V. Double click, Control C, Control V. All right, so now I have an array list of people. Okay, so now what I need to do is I need to process everyone in my DMV line. Okay, so I'm just going to go ahead. We'll start off very simple before you can see down here there's actually a method for processing. We'll get to that eventually. Actually, maybe what I'll do for now is we'll go ahead and I'll make a method. So let me do a for loop. I'll say for int I equals 0. I is less than empire dot size I plus plus. Okay, so that's great. Let's keep on going. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to basically grab my humanoid. So I'll say humanoid. So again, I have an array list full of humanoids. So I'm going to say humanoid unhappy customer, right? Because I rarely see happy people at the DMV, and especially if this is the Empire DMV, you know they're going to be up to some shenanigans. So humanoid unhappy customer equals Empire DMV dot get I. Okay, so that's basically going to loop through each one of these customers, and I can just to kind of show you real quickly that this loop is working, we'll do a system.out.print, and we will print out the unhappy customer. Okay, so now you see our 4 characters, right? Luca Skyscraper from Tatooine has an attack of rock, paper, scissors, and defensive force projection. The Baby Yoda from Dagobah has an attack of force choke and defense cuteness, and so on and so forth. Okay, so that looks pretty good, right? So I'm going to go ahead and have a method which processes the customer, and we'll see it's going to do a number of things. You can see down here, this method is going to describe an interaction between the DMV and the humanoid that is passed in as a parameter to the method. All interactions are printed to the console. Essentially what's going to happen is our humanoids eventually are also going to kind of have ownership of a droid, and what they're actually trying to do is they're trying to register their droid to be able to drive their land speed or something to the effect. So what I'll do is I'll basically have this method process, process DMV customer, and that method is going to take in my unhappy customer, and it'll also take in the line number, which is going to be, we'll say I plus 1. So instead of printing out like customer 0, 1, 2, it'll print out customer 1, 2, 3. All right, so wouldn't it be nice if this method existed? Well, it can. If I just hover over and I click create, you'll see it creates it. I'm going to go ahead and cut that and put it underneath my method description right here. Okay, so now what I can do is I'm going to just remove this system.out.print, kind of cut that line, and I'll paste it inside my method. Okay, and maybe the first thing I'll do is I'll go ahead and I'll just kind of print my customer number, like kind of my line number, so to speak. So I will do something like this. I'll say system.out.print. Maybe I'll do a printf. And I will say customer % interaction. Okay, and then I'll do a new line. And then on my next line, I'll just go ahead and I'll say print line, or maybe I'll do a printf again. And I'll say with a tab, %s, quote. So I'm basically just going to print out my unhappy customer. The customer's just kind of going to, okay, well, let's do this. Let's carry out a conversation here. So, hold on. Before I do that, let's just print this out and see what happens. Okay, we've got an exception on line 53, and it looks like maybe I just need to surround these with parentheses for some reason. Let's see, conversion I, process. Let me pause really quickly because I'm not sure what this problem is. Let me debug this real quickly. Found it. When I printed this, when I created this, I forgot the S right there, and I subsequently forgot the I. Let me change the names here, right? So instead of unhappy customer, I'm just going to change it to H, so it's short, just H for humanoid H. And then the I, I'm going to change to the place in line. Okay, so I'm passing in some humanoid called H, and I'm passing in some integer called the place in line. So that way I can actually do like place in line. Okay, and then here I'll go ahead and I'll just change that to H. So now when I run this, I get customer 1 interaction, and it's just printing all these. You can see I need some better formatting here. So what I'll do is I'll just, for now, I'll go ahead and do a system.out.print line up in my for loop. I might eventually get rid of that, but for at least for now, kind of will handle that simple case for me. Okay, so that looks okay. I'm going to go ahead, right before my for loop, I'm going to go ahead and welcome everyone to the DMV. So I'll say system.out.print, welcome to the Empire DMV. Okay, where dreams come true. All right, so welcome to the DMV. All right, so just for formatting purposes, I'm going to go ahead and kind of tab everything over here. So I'm going to add one tab to my customer. And then down here, I'll add one more tab. Okay, so customer 1 interactions, Lucas Skyscraper. Okay, so how we'll start this off in just kind of filling out the story mode of this, I'm going to have the DMV kind of respond a little bit. Okay, so we'll basically have something like this. We'll do a system.out.printf, and we'll go ahead, I'll put a few tabs here, and then I'll kind of say, hey, the DMV is talking, so DMV with a colon. And then I'll say, please identify yourself, right? We're very cold. I mean, the DMV is not a friendly place anyway, but now we have the Empire, right? So at least they said please, right? That's pretty good. But it's a little bit mechanical in the process. It's probably a droid processing it. So please identify yourself. All right, so let's go ahead and just Make sure this looks okay. Okay, please identify yourself. Let's add a new line after that. Okay, great. So now I'm just going to have like a little bit of a dialogue here. Okay, so I'll go ahead and I'm going to have basically the name printed for the humanoid that's getting processed. We'll add a colon, and then we will basically do another %s with a new line. And what I'm going to replace this 2%s's with is the first one is going to be the humanoids.getName, and the second one is going to be the humanoid's longer kind of string where he's really saying this is who I am. Okay, so we see I'm going to add one more tab in here so it really is kind of a hierarchical display, right? So customer 1 interaction. Well, the DMV says please identify yourself. Lucas Skyscraper then says Lucas Skyscraper from Tatooine has an attack of rock, paper, scissors and defensive force projection. All right, this is the Empire ID, so they really want to know what they're up against. They want to know what your attack and defense is. They're getting all up in your business, so we're going to just kind of share everything with them. Okay, so processing that DMV customer. Okay, so we're just kind of setting up the story here. We're going to leave this this next part, the picking random customers and getting into a fight, for a little bit later. But let's go ahead now, and I want to come in back to where we started with this particular video. Was we said we were going to make some custom methods. Okay, so what I want to do in this case is I want to actually create, right, if we're part of the Empire, then we probably have some unique Empire ID. Okay, so we're actually going to add an Empire ID to my toString. Okay, so when I print out who I am, I should tell the DMV attendant what my unique ID, right? There's probably lots of Lucas Skyscrapers or Baby Yodas in this universe, right? So I need to actually give them my unique ID, which is true of if you actually went to the DMV or your government office, right? They would want to know your state ID. So let's go ahead and create that. So down at the very bottom, I have a method where I can do just that in the humanoid class. All right, so this method, what it's going to do is it's going to be a public method, okay, because I'm going to be able to call it. Actually, I'm going to make it private. Okay, we'll make that a private method because I only really want myself to call the humanoid, I only really want myself to call this method, the humanoid, him or herself. And I'm going to have it return a string, and I'm going to call this get formatted Empire ID string. Okay, and I'll just set it to return null for now. The idea is that this method provides an implementation. This is a little bit ahead of ourselves in terms of the comment. We're going to do something more with this once we get to lesson 2. But for now, we're just going to provide an Empire ID based off of the homeworld and the galactic ID. Okay. And what I'm basically going to do is I'm going to generate a string that looks something like this. It'll be like TAT if you're from Tatooine with a dash, and then some number of digits. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 digits is what I'm actually shooting for. So we're just going to basically have like the first 3 letters of your home world, followed by a dash, followed by an 8-digit unique ID. Okay, so let's get started on that. Let me show you what I actually want to do with that. Eventually what I want to do with that is in my toString, right after I actually print out the name, which is this first one, I want to print out, like I'll say, in parentheses, one more %s. Okay, and then after the name, I'm going to add one more parameter. And I'll just, for now, say my ID. I'll just put like a string literal in there. So that way when I play this, you'll see it's kind of going to do that my ID. Now again, since I already have created this get formatted Empire ID string, I'll go ahead and copy that, and I'll replace that right here with my ID. Make sure you do the open and close parentheses right there. And that way when you play it, it's just going to print null because that's what I'm returning, right? I'm just returning null every time. Okay, so let's go ahead now and create an actual unique custom method. Again, we're not creating getters and setters. We're not just overriding stuff. We're actually creating unique functionality for this particular class. Okay, so what am I going to do here? Well, I am going to go ahead and just kind of leave that up there for now. Basically, I'm going to compose an Empire ID from its parts, right? And what we just talked about is the parts are going to be the home world followed by some unique number. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and what I actually want to do is I want to grab those first 3 characters, right? But I also need to be conscious of the fact that, well, let me tell you what I'm going to be conscious of in just a second. Okay, so I'm going to say string homeworld equals homeworld dot substring from 0 to 3, right? And then I'll go ahead and I'm just gonna, whatever that returns, those 3 characters, I'm going to force it to uppercase. Okay. And then what I'll do, well, let's just, okay. Then what I'll do is I want to generate a random, okay, let's actually just start with this, okay? And then let's return, let's say that let's go ahead and just return HW. So we'll start off just saying that our unique ID is literally the first 3 characters of our homeworld. And when we play this, we get a big fat error in our face. But you see it's working for Luca, it's working for Baby Yoda. It's when we get to Mace Windu that we have a problem. Okay, and if we look at the error, it says string index out of bounds exception. Beginning 0 and 3 length 2. Okay, and what that's kind of telling me, and you can see the problem is in process DMV line 77, line 77, but it's ultimately in line, line 54, right, calls line 77. This is where I'm getting my problem. Wait, let me read that error again. I think I said the wrong thing there. Line 54, where I process that DMV, and then eventually I get down to here. Yeah, I'm sorry, it's this H right here where I'm calling that toString. Right, so the toString, what's happening is that's actually calling this toString, and then that's calling that get formatted Empire ID string. So I'm coming down here, and let me actually set up a breakpoint. Okay, you saw that I'm breaking on Mace Windu, so I actually want to show you this in code because we can. So we'll go ahead and I'll set a breakpoint right here, and I'm going to jump into my debugger. Okay, so first one, the first person is H, right? Luca Skyscraper. We didn't have a problem with her. Now Baby Yoda didn't have a problem with her. It was with Mace Windu, right? So Mace Windu, the first thing that's going to happen is it's probably going to jump and get his name. So it jumps into this get name method. We jump back out, and then we jump into the toString method. The debugger doesn't always do what you hope. It's not really consistent. What I'm going to do is I know for sure eventually I had an error on this portion right here, so I'm actually just going to set my breakpoint, and I'm going to hit F8 a few times. F8, 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 until I get to, it's about Mace Windu's turn. Okay, and eventually when I hit F8, we get to this point. Okay, so where am I? I am basically right here. Okay, I came on this third iteration of process DMV where my customer was Mace Windu, and that took me down to the toString method for Mace Windu, right? You can see this is Mace Windu. And that called the get formatted Empire ID, if we click over here. And now what I'm about to do is I'm about to take this homeworld string, which has 2 characters, and I'm about to cut it down to 3. So that's the problem, right? I'm trying to cut down a string which is only 2 characters long into a string which is 3. So what I need to do, I need to add a little bit of logic here, and I'm simply going to grab the length. I'm going to say int homeworld length equals math.min, of the homeworld dot length and 3. Okay, and then I'm going to replace the 3 here with homeworld len. So what I basically just did is I said don't always take a substring of length 3. Take a substring that is either the minimum of 3 or the length of the actual homeworld. So in this case, when the length was 2, I only want to go from 0 to 2. I don't want to go from 0 to 3. However, if I had a really long planet name and it was 14 characters, then the min of 14 and 3 is 3, so I will just keep those 3 characters. So now when I play it, you'll see that, if I just go full screen and play it, you'll see that I do just fine for my ID here. Okay, so the last thing I want to do is I want to actually format this. I'll say string EID for Empire ID is equal to string dot format, and I'm just going to format it with %s dash %s, again the homeworld, and then some unique ID. And the 2 parameters I'm going to give it are HW, and then I will give it, for the second parameter, I will give it some random number. So I'm actually going to go ahead and create up here. I'm going to create formatter. I'll just say, yeah, formatter and random. Okay, I'll do the formatter in just a second. But the first thing I want to do is create this random randy equals new random, open close parentheses. Make sure you import random. Okay, so literally what I'm going to do is I'm just going to say randy dot next int, and I could start off by doing like 100. I'll change that in just a second. Okay, and then finally I need to return EID instead of that homeworld string. So there we go, right? So Tatooine 98, Dagobah 45, She 45, and so on and so forth. Okay, if I made it a little bit bigger, you can see I'm going to get strings of, those happen to be always in the single thousands, but if I do it again right now, I have a 4-digit number, here I have a 3-digit number. So what I said was I always wanted the numbers to be exactly 8 digits long. So in order to do that, I just need to create a decimal formatter class. So decimal formatter. Actually, I don't need the decimal formatter because I already have the string.format down here. So what I can do in this case is actually notice that this integer, right, is a number, okay, which means I can format it as with the D formatter, which basically is a whole number. It stands for decimal number, but it's not decimal in the sense of like 0.45. And you'll see it works just the same at this point, right? So if I play it, and you can see there's 2 digits, 3 digits, 4 digits. All I need to do is right in between the % and the D, just add like a 08, and it basically says I want at least 8 digits, and pad any pad it with zeros. So now you can see I get those 8 digits right there. Okay, so again, I'll just kind of really creating the random object right there. Should be able to delete this comment right here. And now what I'll do is return Empire ID. Okay. So now again, we've got that Empire ID printing out successfully. All right, and that's pretty much all I want to do in this video. So again, in this video, we really dove down into creating our own custom method. In our case, it was the formatted ID. I'm just kind of generating a random number here. Obviously, we could run into some issues where these are not unique. Actually in lesson 2, one of the first things we'll do is ensure that everyone in our empire and our galactic universe gets unique numbers, regardless of whether they're humanoids or whether they're droids, which is what we're going to create in the next video. I guess the last thing I'll do is just kind of make these numbers a little bit bigger. So I'll make them, since I'm forcing 8 digits, I'll make them up through 8 digits. So I'll do 1, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, and one more 0. So basically 100,000. So that should generate, 100 million will generate 8 8-digit numbers for me. So that way I'm actually getting big numbers, right? Big unique numbers, up to 100 million. But I am still doing the leading zeros. Okay, so we'll see you in the next video. In the next video, we'll create one more class, and this time we're going to do it really fast. So I'm going to show you how fast we can create a new class, and then we'll actually consume that class and kind of finish out the examples here. All right, so I'll see you in the next video.